In the heart of Nigeria, there are hills where no one dares to go after dark. The Igbo Hills, a place where the wind does not just carry sound, but voices from the dead. Tonight, I will tell you a story that has haunted villagers for generations. Once you hear these echoes, you will never sleep the same again. If you are brave enough, stay with me till the end, and don't forget to subscribe because many more terrifying secrets are waiting for you. The Igbo Hills were known for their beauty during the day. From a distance, they looked peaceful, covered with thick green trees and small streams of water that shone like silver under the sunlight. Birds sang sweetly in the mornings, and farmers sometimes passed by with their goats and cows. But when the sun began to set, the story of the hills changed completely. The same place that looked calm in daylight became a land of fear at night. The people who lived in nearby villages always warned their children never to go near the hills after sunset. The elders told stories about strange voices that lived there. These were not normal voices, but echoes that called people by their names. Some believed they were the cries of ancestors who had died in the hills long ago. Others said they were angry spirits searching for peace. Whatever the truth was, everyone agreed on one thing: if you entered the hills after dark, you might never return. There were many tales of hunters and travelers who disappeared in the hills. Villagers would hear their voices days later, echoing in the night wind, but no one ever saw them again. Because of this, people stopped hunting there and made sure to return home before nightfall. The Igbo Hills became a forbidden place, feared by all. Yet, in every generation, there were always a few who did not listen to warnings. The younger ones, full of courage and curiosity, often believed that the old stories were just myths. They laughed at the tales of spirits and said the echoes were nothing but the sound of the wind bouncing between the rocks. But deep inside, even the bravest felt a strange chill whenever they looked at the hills under the moonlight. And so, the Igbo Hills stood in silence, beautiful in the day, terrifying at night, holding secrets that no one dared to uncover. In a small village near the Igbo Hills lived 4 close friends: Chika, Ifani, Adaora, and Nonso. They had grown up together, spending their days swimming in the river, climbing trees, and listening to the old stories told by the elders. But unlike most of the villagers, they were never afraid of those stories. In fact, they found them exciting. Every time the elders warned about the hills, the friends would whisper among themselves, saying, "Maybe one day we should go and see for ourselves." Chika, the boldest of the group, always wanted to test the truth behind the tales. He did not believe in spirits and laughed whenever people spoke of curses. Ifani was quieter, but he followed Chika everywhere, never letting his best friend go on an adventure alone. Adaora, smart and stubborn, often challenged the boys, saying, "You think only men can be brave? I will climb those hills before you." Nonso, the youngest and most fearful, was always the voice of caution. He begged them to stay away, but deep down he knew that if the others went, he would go too. One evening, after a village gathering, the friends sat together near the river. The moon was bright, and the shadow of the Igbo Hills stretched across the land. Chika looked at the others and said, "We keep hearing these stories, but we have never seen anything with our own eyes. Let us climb the hills tonight, just once. Then we will know the truth." Nonso immediately shook his head, warning them of the dangers. But Adaora laughed and called him a coward. Ifani stayed silent, watching the dark hills in the distance, but when Chika stood up, he stood too. At last, Nonso gave in. Together, the four friends agreed they would enter the forbidden Igbo Hills that very night, ignoring all the warnings. Little did they know, the echoes were already waiting for them. The four friends began their journey into the Igbo Hills under the pale light of the moon. At first, everything seemed normal. The night was quiet except for the sound of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl. The path was narrow and covered with dry leaves, which cracked loudly under their feet. Chika led the way, holding a small lantern, while the others followed closely behind. As they moved deeper, the air grew colder. A strange mist rose from the ground, making it hard to see far ahead. Nonso whispered nervously, asking if they should turn back, but Chika brushed off his fears. "It's only fog," he said with a smile, though his own voice trembled slightly. Then, something unusual happened. The friends began to hear a faint sound, like soft murmuring carried by the wind. At first, they thought it was the rustle of trees. But soon, the whispers grew clearer. The voices were not random. They were calling names. Chika, Ifani, Adaora, Nonso. The four froze where they stood, their hearts pounding. Adaora tried to laugh, saying it must be an echo of their own voices. To prove it, she shouted, "Who's there?" But the hills answered back with the same words, only twisted, sounding as if many people were speaking at once. The chilling echo repeated, "Who's there?" Nonso grabbed Ifani's arm in fear, but Chika forced himself to move forward. "It's just the rocks," he insisted, though sweat dripped down his face. As they climbed higher, the shadows seemed to move on their own, stretching unnaturally across the trees. The friends began to feel as though unseen eyes were watching them from every side. The deeper they went, the louder the echoes became, bouncing from tree to tree. The whispers now sounded less like words and more like groans of pain. Fear crept into their hearts, but it was already too late. The hills had welcomed them. The friends pushed deeper into the misty hills, their footsteps slow and uncertain. The whispers that had followed them earlier now faded into a strange silence. For a moment, it felt as if the entire forest was holding its breath. The crickets stopped singing, the owls no longer hooted, and even the wind seemed to disappear. The silence was heavier than sound, pressing on their ears until it felt unbearable. Then, suddenly, Chika's lantern light revealed something unusual. In the middle of a small clearing stood an ancient structure made of stone. Vines had crawled over it, hiding most of the carvings, but the shape was still clear. It was an old shrine, half broken and forgotten. The walls were covered with strange symbols, faces with hollow eyes, mouths frozen in screams, and twisted shapes that looked like people trapped in pain. The friends stepped closer, their curiosity stronger than their fear. At the center of the shrine lay a flat stone altar. On it was a cracked mask, made of wood and clay, its surface stained with something dark that looked like dried blood. Even though the mask was broken, a faint glow pulsed from its hollow eyes, as if it were alive. Ada Aura bent down, reaching her hand toward the mask, but Ifani quickly stopped her. "Don't touch it," he warned in a trembling voice. But Chica laughed nervously. "It's only a piece of wood. The elders must have put it here long ago." Before anyone could argue, a low sound filled the air. It was not quite a voice, not quite a growl, but something in between. The ground beneath their feet trembled slightly, and the carvings on the walls seemed to shift as if the faces were crying. The four friends realized they were standing in a place where no living person was meant to be. The shrine was not just old, it was cursed. And now, something inside it had awakened. The friends stepped back from the glowing mask, their fear growing heavier with each passing second. The silence of the hills broke suddenly. The whispers they had heard before returned, but now they were louder, sharper, and filled with anger. The echoes no longer repeated their words in a playful way. They twisted them into cries of pain and terrifying laughter. "Chica," the hills moaned. "Adaora," the voices groaned. "Ifani," "Nanso." Each name came with a force that rattled through their bones. Nanso covered his ears, but the voices only grew louder inside his head. Adaora shouted at the hills to stop, but her voice came back to her in a scream that did not sound human. It was as though the hills were mocking them, turning their words into something unholy. Suddenly, the lantern flickered and went out, throwing them into near darkness. Only the faint glow from the cracked mask lit the shrine. The air grew icy cold, their breath visible in the night. Shadows stretched across the ground, moving even though no one was walking. Then, something strange happened to Adaora. She froze in place, her eyes wide and unblinking. Slowly, she began to smile, but it was not her usual smile. Her lips twisted unnaturally, and when she spoke, her voice was not her own. It was deeper, broken, and echoed as if many people were speaking at once. "Why have you come here?" she asked in the haunting voice. The others backed away, terrified. Ifani shook her shoulders, begging her to wake up, but she only laughed, a cold, hollow laugh that filled the clearing. The echoes copied her laugh again and again until the whole hill seemed to be laughing with her. The friends now understood. The hills were alive, and Adaora was no longer fully herself. Something had entered her, and it wanted more. Adaora's body shook as if an invisible force was pulling her in different directions. Her friends tried to hold her, but she pushed them away with strength far greater than her own. Her eyes turned pale, almost white, glowing faintly in the darkness. When she spoke again, the voice that came out was not human. It was ancient, heavy, and echoed as though 100 voices spoke at once. "You should not have come here," the spirit said through her. The ground trembled, and the mask on the altar began to glow brighter, casting long, frightening shadows on the shrine walls. Chica, though trembling, shouted into the darkness, demanding to know who or what was speaking. The voice answered with a chilling calm. "I am the spirit of the Igbo Hills. These hills are graves, filled with the souls of those who died long ago. Their pain feeds me. Their cries are my echoes. And now you belong to me." The friends felt a cold wind circle around them, carrying with it faint cries and weeping voices. Nonso dropped to his knees, begging for mercy, while Afani tried to pull Adaora away from the altar. But the spirit held her tightly, her body rooted to the ground as though invisible chains bound her. The spirit's voice grew louder. For centuries, no living soul has dared to enter this shrine. The hills demand a sacrifice. Only then will the echoes rest. Choose one of you, or none of you shall leave. The friends froze in horror. The hills were not cursed by accident. The curse was alive, breathing, and hungry. The spirit wanted blood. Chica clenched his fists, realizing they were trapped. The hills had given them only two choices: betray one another, or join the countless souls already lost in the endless echoes. The spirit's demand hung heavy in the cold night air: choose a sacrifice, or stay forever. The friends stood frozen, their breaths quick and shallow. None of them spoke at first. The echoes grew restless, repeating the spirit's words, twisting them into cries and screams that bounced across the hills. Nonso clutched his head, shaking in terror. "We have to leave. We have to run," he cried. But as soon as he turned, the trees around the shrine shifted. Their branches twisted into claw-like shapes, blocking the path. The hills had closed them in. There was no easy escape. Adaora's body was still under the spirit's control, her eyes glowing faintly. She stepped toward her friends, her voice layered with dozens of whispers. "One of you must stay. One of you must feed the hills." Ifani, trembling, tried to reason with the spirit. "Please, we mean no harm. We are only children." For a brief moment, the voices softened, but then the spirit roared through Adaora. "Every soul who enters belongs to me." The friends realized that if they waited any longer, they would all be lost. Chica, always the bold one, made a desperate choice. He grabbed the glowing mask from the altar, shouting, "If you want someone, take me instead." The mask burned his hands, but he refused to let go. The shrine shook violently. The echoes screamed so loudly that it felt like the hills would split apart. The mask cracked even more, its glow fading as if the spirit was being pulled back inside. Ada Aura collapsed to the ground, free from its grip. The friends dragged her out of the shrine. The mist cleared just enough to show them the path back to the village. But behind them, the hills echoed one last chilling laugh, as if to say, "You may leave, but you are never free." Even though they escaped, the Igbo Hills would forever haunt their dreams. And the echoes never truly stopped. The friends may have escaped, but the echoes of the Igbo Hills never truly die. Even now, some say that if you stand near those hills at night, you will hear voices calling your name. Would you dare to go there alone? Tell me in the comments what you would do if the hills whispered your name. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe, because even darker stories are waiting for you here. The next one might just keep you awake tonight.